So, good morning, Christian. You are head of sector of AI innovation at the European Commission's Directorate General for Translation. And you were once a translator in the English department in DD Translation. But between your DD Translation jobs, you were for some time working as policy and program officer in the area of AI and robotics at another European Commission Directorate General, namely Connect, or Communications Networks, Content and Technology. And when I first met you, you had just come back to DD Translation, because you sensed that there was something happening. And it was happening, and it is happening, and it will continue happening, and that's what we are going to talk about today in far too little time to cover everything. But let's start with the AI-based multilingual services that we offer to a group, some groups of key external stakeholders. Could we have, yes, we have the first slide. Thank you very much. What are these AI-based multilingual services, and how did it start? And crucially, why in DG Translation?
Well, I think that today we have a tendency to forget that AI was born in translation. The models that we see today, although they have a lot more capabilities, they were invented originally for machine translation. So in DGT, we were the natural place to try to work with this technology, because we are a large group of professional translators. We have a lot of high quality data, and we have to remember also that the data comes from human work as well, and especially compared to what you see in the large language models built primarily on data from the internet. What you have in data, in institutional data like in DGT, is much higher quality, much complex, more complex text, and also diverse, both in terms of languages and in terms of topics. So it all started with machine translation, with e-translation in 2018. And then gradually we tried to go into more natural language processing services like speech transcription, and we have a long list there. I'm not going through all of them in detail. But really important use cases, either inside the institutions or for our external stakeholders, who are primarily public administrations and small and medium-sized enterprises and NGOs and academia. And you mentioned DG Connect. This is all in a partnership with DG Connect for external stakeholders as well. Of course, when the ChatGPT moment happened, the LLM explosion, everybody saw the larger and larger models, different abilities, and we also try to get into the new era, of course. So the most recent services like e-briefing and e-reply are purely new AI applications. And as a reminder, you probably know that the Commission a couple of weeks ago published the Apply AI strategy, in which the basic principle is that whatever applications we're going to have in the future, they are going to be AI first. And these are that kind of applications, you know, that where you try to build on top of an AI model to get the best out of it for specific use cases.
Yeah, and that's a question as well. So why should these services, why should anyone use these services and not just a general AI chatbot that's available on the market, which I think that many of us use in our personal life and also professionally? What's the difference between these specific services?
Yeah, we also saw it first in chatbots, right? ChatGPT and others. But it's time also to look beyond that, because that's a kind of conversational interaction, right? For certain use cases, if you want to find out how, I don't know, how to sort an IT issue on your laptop, or I don't know, how to repair your shower. I tried that as well. It's just trying to tweak things, you know, to find out information or to learn to do something. But beyond that, especially when we talk about the enterprise, about the corporate environment, you know, we have to think about also more specialization and more consistency and more reliability. because you want things to happen in some cases automatically for you. You know, translators don't go to a chatbot to get a translation. You know, we have an entire workflow where the machine translation is produced automatically before the request reaches you. And that doesn't replace you. That is your tool. It's part of your resources that you use in the translation project. But you're not going to take your document and go into a chatbot and have a conversation about your document with a chatbot, right? You want things to happen fast and to be very ready for you. So this is what we try to do here. These are task-specific services. And in a way, if you think about it, machine translation and all the technology behind machine translation is task-specific, started as a task-specific application. So what it means is, it means that the user, whether it's a human using the browser or whether it's another machine, you know, through the API, only provides the inputs, the information sources to use. And then we take care of everything. We have a specialized application that is targeted at that specific use case, whether it's translation or whether it's about drafting a briefing or another type of document. I don't know, you analyze call for tenders, for example, and you need to prepare for that as an SME, for example. It's important because also, as you all know, things change very fast. And if you just have a conversation with a chatbot, it doesn't matter. Your chatbot is just getting better, you know, and the conversation is maybe more precise, better answers and so on. But if you try to use AI in one of your everyday tasks at work, you want to have quality and consistency also when the technology keeps changing. So you have new models, you have different models, you have new versions. What worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. And when we build such task-specific services, we take care of that part because we have a dedicated team of experts that are trying to ensure that maximum quality and consistency. So the technology keeps moving. What we do here is basically what you see in the chatbot as well. You will see just the quality improving rather than you having to figure it out again and again and again how to use an AI system or a chatbot to perform a certain more complex task.
Yeah, these experts, we heard yesterday how our keynote speaker, Bruno Herrmann, was quite impressed that good keynote speaker. I'll go for one of those instead. That works as well. Okay, so third time for the benefit of our online viewers. So our keynote speaker, Bruno Herrmann, yesterday he was quite impressed that in DG Translation we have a team of prompt engineers. And they are part of that expert team that you mentioned. And this is one of the new linguist professions, right?
Well, at least an activity. I don't know about professions. And probably we should be careful with the word engineering and engineer. First of all, you say engineering and a lot of people get scared away, you know, instantly, it's not for me. And also on the other hand, you use the word engineer and other people say, well, wait a minute, these are not real engineers. So I think we have to be a little bit careful. It's about this idea of designing specialized prompts. It's one thing to have a chat, to, you know, short messages or requests, even a little bit longer, but, you know, usually not longer than a paragraph or a short list of instructions. And it's another thing to try to design a prompt or a series of prompts in a specialized workflow to generate, for example, an entire briefing for a meeting of a commissioner, for example. And that would include things like main messages and background and questions and answers, but also a long speech of 1,000 words in this case. Or to do legal analysis, whether the commission or some other entity has legal competence to intervene in a certain matter, you know, under the treaties and EU law. Those are things that go far beyond a simple chat when you try to generate a document that gives you thorough analysis and some reliable recommendations. So this is where the engineering part of prompt engineering comes from, and also from the fact that it's a lot of trial and error. Like you try and try and try, and it doesn't work, you give up, and then you try again, and one day you have a good idea, you try and it works, and then 2 days later it doesn't work again. So they say it's more art than science, but the engineering part, it's also because of this trial and error aspect. And I heard some experts in the field also talking about the syndrome of the mythical prompt, which is the prompt that is just over the horizon. Like if you try just one more time, a different wording, I don't know, putting an extra exclamation mark or something is going to work perfectly. And it's that kind of, you just try to reach that horizon and you never reach it. And you'll never know if you didn't try just one more time, it was that mythical prompt that is going to solve all your problems. And yes, we have a dedicated team of, we don't call them just prompt engineering, but rather business analysis and prompt engineering, because it's not just about sitting in a corner and writing some instructions on your own, you know, like you wrote, I don't know, some other text. But you have to have an entire discussion and analysis about the task that you are trying to perform. And to do that, you do it together with the experts who actually have to do that task every day. So if we talk about briefings or about some kind of report that you want to generate, you know, you go and talk to the people who work on those documents, and you try to translate together with them that kind of task in a specialized workflow with a set of specialized prompts. And I think we were definitely the first, at least in the institutions, probably the first in all the public sector in Europe. I don't know if broader than that. And we might still be unique in many places, at least in the public sector, in the sense of having a dedicated team for this. And it's actually a team that is also offering opportunities for our trainees as well. We have a couple of AI trainees. Well, they're not AI, but they work in AI. And they have an opportunity, you know, to get involved, to build together with us prototypes for such task-specific services.
Okay, yeah, you mentioned that the mythical prompt, that you can always continue working on it. That does remind me of the mythical translation, the translation that's perfect. So I can see how linguists are well placed to do this. And you mentioned earlier when we were chatting before that these services, they have pages and pages of prompts pre-prepared. So that's when you just throw in one sentence to whatever chatbot you prefer. It's a big difference.
I think when we started in e-briefing, the total number of instructions were about 1 page or 2 pages, and now we have multiple steps. So each step has its own specialized prompt, and all together in total they are about 21 pages now. So you have to imagine also how it is when you have a new colleague on your team. So you have somebody new who has never seen the kind of, I don't know, audit report or whatever thing you want to generate. And you tell this person, go and write an audit report, you know, or you have a chat over coffee, to use the word chat from the chatbots, right? You have a chat, oh, you know, your task is going to be to write audit reports, and you're going to be there in that office, and you're going to use some documents, go and do something, you know? Short conversation, 10 minutes. Well, you will get something, but it might not be the thing that you are expecting. You know, you have certain procedures, certain rules, and so on. Compare that to a proper onboarding, where you have, you know, proper training, like somebody starts as a new member of the team, you have the presentations and maybe documentation, and you have to explain what that audit report is, what it should contain, and how you should draft it, how you should consult perhaps with stakeholders, and so on. Now, when you think about it and when you try to put on paper what you do, for example, if you want to train a new colleague to do what you do, see how many pages it takes to write those instructions. Now, these models, they don't know what you do, right? They haven't observed you or anything. So you have to tell them what it is that you do so that you teach that kind of role to an AI model.
Yeah, and a lot of things of what you do are intuitive, so you really have to think about how to explain, yes. Multilingual services. Maybe you would say a few words about how multilingual are the AI-based services.
Well, we cover all the EU official languages and also a few other major languages or languages that had a certain special connection to what we do. For example, countries that are not members of the EU, but they are associated with the Digital Euro program. But also other special situations, as is the case of Ukraine. When the invasion started, our team in about 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they very quickly added Ukrainian as well to e-translation. And in the other newer services, of course, we always cover all the languages in the EU. And we also try to link them between each other. For example, when you request an output in another language in e-briefing or e-reply, it's going to go through e-translation, because multilingual capabilities are still relatively poor in a lot of languages, even for the top models. The moment you go beyond English and some of the major languages, the coverage gets thinner and thinner, and you start to see the cracks.
Okay. Thank you. So if someone in the audience works for example, public authority, I recommend you go to this page and have a look what's in there, because there also you add more services from time to time. This is getting a bit crowded on the page, so
we're going to replace it with everything at some point soon in the.
And let's move on with the next slide as background to hear a little bit about, this is very exciting, about the plans for an EU institutional large language model. What's happening there?
Well, what we are trying here, we're trying to use our data to continue the training of open source LLMs, European open source LLMs, and to make our data useful in the sense of increasing their multilingual capabilities and also their ability to handle EU-related topics. We used all that data in e-translation before, so that is a specific type of AI technology. Now we have this new environment with these large language models, and we try to take advantage of that data again in this new way. So in a way, it's full circle, you know, it's all about the data in the end, and all about the people who are actually creating that data, because we talk about data in the abstract, but we need to remember all the time that it's not coming out of thin air. It's coming from language professionals who work on these translations, but also from the domain experts, because it's not just the translator, yes, it's also the domain experts in the other DGs who have written various types of document or legislation on different topics, some technical, some general, some relating to human rights or to law in general, other things, processes in agriculture or in manufacturing and so on. So it's, you see data and you see a database, but it has been created as the result of hard work by a very large number of human experts. So we try to do that. We try to focus especially on the multilingual capabilities, and it's not easy. Because if it were easy, I think I said this job 2 years ago when I was on this stage, I wouldn't be here talking to you, I would be working for OpenAI or something. But we have a really brilliant team of AI engineers in-house who work on these projects, and they have managed to achieve really high performance in training large language models. We are not yet working with a huge model, but we are seeing already good results, because again, the primary question is about our data. You know, is our data useful in this new LLM era? And we see good results, especially in the less represented languages, you know, like Maltese and Estonian and some others.
I realized when you're talking about the data and our data that we missed to point out something very, very important about the AI-based services that we offer, which is your data. So we have a specific added value for our AI-based multilingual services when it comes to user data.
I think the main aspect is that it's institutional data. So this is data that comes from all the EU institutions. So it's data that, I mean, we are the EU institutions. We serve the public interest. We serve the European citizens. So all the data that we produce, all these documents, they also reflect all the values of the EU, and trying to comply with also all the fundamental need to avoid bias, to avoid a certain orientation. If you look at the main models that are available at the moment, there is research that shows that they all reflect the interests and the ideologies of their creators. So whether they are...
And this you were here yesterday and listening to Marina Pancheva about bias.
Yeah.
So that's...
it's not only bias, it's also interest and influence, you control the training data, you control the model. Do you know if Microsoft or somebody else are not training their models not to say bad things about Microsoft and to say only bad things about Google, or not to mention what you exclude from the training data? If you are from certain regions of the world, are you going to keep in your training data certain information about certain events of the past that you maybe want to erase from the memory of your society? It's as important what you put in as what you leave out. So you don't have control over that, or you are a player that may intentionally or unintentionally reflect or put your interests inside the training data, then the outputs are going to reflect that as well. But in the case of public institutions like the European Commission and the other EU institutions, we represent the public interest. So our bias is the public's interest and serving the European citizen, which I suppose is the preferable kind of bias in this case.
Yeah, and also you don't use the data that users, the user data is not used to train the model.
Yeah, that's part of the kind of the privacy and security and safety by default, because in all these services, yes, we do not even look at the data that comes in and goes out. So it's all, of course, there are safeguards in place not to use bad things or to generate bad things. But otherwise, from the point of view of privacy, everything is just processed on the go and then discarded. And it's very important to keep in mind that it's the same for whatever kind of input data. So it's by default for all the users, for any input. So you put in there something that is about your own organization, is going to be treated as confidentially as if you were to put, I don't know, Little Red Riding Hood in there and you want to read it in a different language.
Yeah, so your data will not be used to train the models, but then we can come back to how you are presenting.
It's in this area, it's good to have no's, many no's, and we have something like 5 or 6 no's, no storage, no access, no reuse, no sharing. It's all no about the data, it's no all over the place. Sometimes I joke that it's not like Las Vegas, everything that happens in e-translation or our services doesn't stay there.
No.
But that sounds like a little bit on the negative side, because it's going out there. It doesn't go anywhere either. So it's really, instantly everything is erased and it's gone.
Okay, but then maybe we should mention a little bit in the training, when you're training, that we've had access to these supercomputers.
Yeah, in terms of the technology involved, the Euro-HPC network is another big initiative of the European Commission, and it's accelerating at the moment. It's a network, it's a public-private network of supercomputers, so it's co-funded by the EU, together with the member states, but also with private players in the different member states. There are now 9 active, because I think the latest one is the one in Germany, which is the first exascale supercomputer in Europe, Jupiter, and the other ones as well. 3 of them are in the top 10 in the world. And we started on the one that is in Luxembourg, on Meluxina. It's one of the smaller ones in the network, but still very powerful. And now we work with the Leonardo supercomputer in Bologna, and we are preparing to test our whole setup also Mare Nostrum in Barcelona, because they are set up at a certain point in time, and when a new one is set up and the hardware keeps evolving as well, so you also need to try to keep up with the evolution of computing power. So computing power is essential in this area. We see the models, we see the data, but we have to remember that it's all about hardware, especially. Even when things started to work much better, the algorithms, the technology was really not that new. There were new algorithms, but the basic principles were relatively old. But there was no computing power. And suddenly there was that power and there was a lot of data. And when they came all together, there were all these new models that have much better capabilities. And you see it today in the news that there's a huge, they call it the great AI build-out or rollout, accompanied by a great AI bubble as well in parallel. But you see the investment in the infrastructure all over the world, in the US, in the Middle East, in China also, in Europe, not to the same extent. And also when you see all the talk about bubble, you have to remember the internet rollout as well, because internet started with dial-up. I don't know how many people in the room lived long enough to have experienced dial-up, especially the one at 1.2 kilobytes per second or something like that. When we got to 5 kilobytes per second, wow, this is high-speed internet. So it took a lot of years until you had broadband and fiber optic. I bet half of the room maybe still doesn't have fiber optic in their building maybe. So even that rollout is not yet finished, and the AI infrastructure rollout is still just starting, but remains to be seen. And the model that we use is from Mistral AI in France. It's an open source model. So our focus is on European open source models, and there are more available. I think we have friends from Tilde in the room. Tilde just a few weeks ago released a Tilde Open LLM, another example. And we hope to continue to do that, to use our data to build on such open source models from European players, and to create versions of those models that are EU institutional LLMs, in the sense that they have been further improved on the language side with our data, but also given this kind of orientation also in terms of that bias towards the public interest in Europe.
Yeah, so it's very much a European LLM when it comes to the technology, and we also talk about EU values. And you mentioned, and one thing is, of course, the data is safe. We don't use the user data, and we talked about bias. Do you want to add a few more things about how does it reflect EU values? What does this mean?
And the decisions. As I said before, the decision of what you put in the training data is the control over the behavior of the model as well. And at the moment, that is the area with the major providers where is the total lack of transparency. Even those who were open source at some point, when they went back and they said, oh, we used some data, just a little reference what they used. Of course, under the AI Act, they will have requirements for a lot more transparency. But still, beyond the basic requirements to be safe, not to be toxic and so on, when it comes to any kind of influence that may not be toxic in the sense of high risk under the AI Act, there still is a lot of scope for commercial interests to be reflected in such models. And if the models come from other regions of the world, even if those commercial interests are not present, it's still a reflection of what the ideology is in the US or China or Saudi Arabia and so on. So the decision of what you put in the training data and how you do the training is crucial. And if that decision, in our case, is made by a public institution, that's a decision that's going to reflect the public interest.
Okay, thank you. And as we're talking, the topic of this conference is quality. I wanted to ask about how do you in general measure the quality of an LLM?
It's a field where everything is trying to be based on automated metrics, and there are these special data sets that are separate from the training data sets that are called benchmarking data sets or evaluation data sets, and you run them through your model and you get some scores. It's a little bit like asking the AI model to sit an exam. You know, you go to an exam, you have maybe a multiple choice question type of exam. You go through your questions, you give the answers, you have a score at the end. And all the providers do that. You know, there are certain established benchmarking data sets. You run all of them, you have certain scores, and then you show up and you say, look, my model is better than the other model because the score is higher. Now, there are many different problems with these benchmarks. You know, some of them cheat, you know, they put a little bit of similar data in their own training data, and then suddenly the model, you know, one of the basic principles is that the model should not have seen the exam data before. You know, if you go to an exam and you know what the questions are, you're going to do, maybe your memory is not going to remember everything, but you will do much better than. So that's a form of cheating that looks like, or at least massaging the model to be a little bit better at those questions. It's also becoming more and more difficult to make sure that your evaluation data set, your training data doesn't contain anything that is in the evaluation data set, because there is so much data that nobody actually knows really what they put in the end, like every single bit in the training data. But then there are the issues of quality with what is inside the data sets themselves. And we had a discussion with the EMT network just yesterday. First of all, they are in English. So whatever you try to test in other languages, in general, they don't tell you much. Some of them claim to be multilingual, but not necessarily validated or translated by professional translators, or created by human experts. Everything that is created by a human expert or has been validated by human experts in this field is called the gold standard, because you know that there is a confirmation that the quality is there. So some of these data sets that claim to be multilingual, they actually used machine translation to cover other languages. And they didn't even use neural machine translation. They actually, in some cases, they used GPT 3.5, which, I don't know, you remember when ChatGPT started the first time? That was GPT 3.5. You remember that hallucinations were all over the place? That was compared to today. I mean, I remember with a colleague from the Bulgarian department, we tried GPT-4, which was after GPT 3.5, to see if it was able to translate something into Bulgarian. All the words were invented. All the words in the piece of text, not even one was a real Bulgarian word. And there are people today who claim that their multilingual benchmarking data sets were created with a model before that model. So the capacity to handle things in Bulgarian or in some of these benchmarking data sets, I think, is really limited.
Okay, so there we have, just as we have the need for prompt engineers, this is also another role for linguists and translators to work on the benchmarking data sets.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I need to time myself as I timed everybody else. So
we don't have the full day, or I came prepared for the full day.
I decide that, don't
Okay.
The third, if I can have the third slide here, and we'll say a few words about this European language data space.
So this is part of the, I don't know how many of you are familiar, there's an entire set of common European data spaces for different sectors. What is special about the language one is that it's the only cross-cutting one. Everything else is staying within the sector, whether it's tourism or agriculture and other fields. But the language space, it's a horizontal one, because of course, I mean, it's the word language. It's in the name of the large language models. Everything is about language. So it's going to be, horizontal, supporting all the other data spaces as well. And we are part of it because this is an initiative that is funded through DigiConnect under the Digital Euro program. And DGT as well is hosting one of these nodes. Part of our data is available as public data and is going to be available through the language data space. And we are going to try to invite all the other DGs in the Commission, but also your organizations in the room to try to be part of this language data space. I think some of you for sure were part of the European Language Resource Coordination before, and this is basically an evolution of it as well, building on what happened in that previous project.
So this will be crucial also to balance up between English and other languages that...
It's that, but also, I mean, it's an attempt to overcome fragmentation. We have an issue of fragmentation in Europe in many respects. And this is a contribution to that as well, you know, to create a space, a safe space where you can share data, but it's also a marketplace because it's not just about open source data, it's also about proprietary data. So it's an attempt to try to create a space where if you are an owner of data that can be monetized, you can make it available for builders of AI models and others in Europe to use it in a safe way in the sense that you retain the ownership of that data. So it's not going to be taken by somebody and put somewhere else. And you know, all of AI, okay, there are multiple ingredients, but in the end, data is the fundamental, you know, it's a foundation. And if you want to have a strong AI ecosystem in Europe, you have to have a very strong data foundation as well. And this is going in that direction. So, but it will require organizations like ours, you know, like DGT and the other DGs, but also your organizations in the room to contribute to that, because otherwise it remains an empty marketplace, and markets have to be bustling.
Okay, get ready with your questions, and a final conclusion from you, Cristian?
Well, I just wanted to, all these aspects of quality, I think they also highlight that there is a very important place for language professionals in building AI as well, you know, not just in using AI or assessing AI or criticizing AI. That's also part of the standard discussion. But you know, there are all these language-related quality issues in those benchmarking data sets, in the training data, and so on. So I think I also want to send a message to engineers may not always recognize that, you know, people who actually build these AI models. So I think you and we need to carve a place for ourselves in among these AI builders, because AI is made of language. And if you build something made of language without expert language professionals, you're not going to reach the potential quality that you could.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Yes, Anna?
Hi, thank you for the talk. I have a question that might be a bit niche, but when you receive funding for the European Union, you have everything you do has to be open source. Even the publications have to be open source, and then you show this as well, you know, the data market. So I have two questions derived from that. What is the European Union doing to protect this data? Because we are putting all the data on the open, but other companies and all the giant tech companies are not. So we are in a way exposing ourselves and sharing with everybody, and Europe are, you know, that's the basis of all MT engines. Is Europe thinking about what to do with that, how to protect this data? And then about the role of translators and linguists as annotators or somehow AI-related tasks. I don't think we can achieve anything interesting with that without putting a price tag to that that is higher than it is at the moment, because you know that annotators are paid very little money and sometimes not paid. So shouldn't we also have regulations on to lift this task to a higher level?
I told you we have to stay all day here to talk about. We didn't even get into the open source aspect. Of course, what we do in this LLM training project, we are going to make it available as open source as well in Europe. That principle, that idea of trying to support the EU ecosystem rather than the big tech player from other parts of the world is built into this idea of these common data spaces, because this data that is available in these data spaces is only going to be available within the sector in the EU. So the language one across all sectors, but the other one exclusively inside the sector. It's a big issue, yes, and not only Europe versus other parts of the world, but also small players versus large players, because you share your data and you say, yes, very nice, open source, lots of data, big models and so on, but only the big players can take advantage of it. So there is no easy solution, but all the concepts of these common data spaces have built-in ideas to try to, first of all, do it specifically for the EU ecosystem, and also targeting in particular SMEs and startups. Now, I'm not saying that it's easy and that is guaranteed, but that is definitely the goal. For the part about the roles, I think I see it a little bit differently. First of all, and again, you may disagree with me, AI is like religion these days, You are a believer or non-believer or on the fence, So yeah, on the religion side, I'm a non-believer. On the AI side, I'm on the fence on some topics, and it's the annotation aspect here. In the previous technology, we needed all this labeled data, annotated data, because there were different types of model. Right now, we just show data to these models. Whatever data comes along. The entire internet. I was just listening to a talk the other day. Even the leading experts in the field don't understand why it works when the data from the internet is full of garbage, in the sense of not that it's toxic or incorrect, or well, a lot of it is incorrect as well, but it's not necessarily fluent text, running text. There are bits and pieces, and for some reason, if you throw just large volumes, of course, now there is a trend to try to make things more efficient, be more selective. Again, the quality aspect comes into play, but the initial process was, just throw everything in, a lot of computing power, and it works. Let's throw more at it, and it worked better. Yeah. But it's unstructured data. So when I say that there is a place for language professionals, and there should be one carved by the language professionals themselves, it's more on the side of actually becoming employees of AI companies, just working directly on AI systems rather than just serving those companies with annotation or translation, but being one of the experts, part of the team that is actually building AI models, to ensure the language expert knowledge is part of the design process, whether on the data side or on the algorithm side.
Okay, thank you very much, Cristian. I see that Mika is standing up. Yes, you're standing up there, so yes, and but thank you very much, and as you said, we could continue all day, and I hope that some of you will chat with Cristian later on to get more answers or more questions. So, thank you very much. Thank you.